Boker Tov, Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live here on World Harvest Television Network. Delighted to be with you again. Going to do a little bit of a recap this morning, but don't forget, if you want to be able to catch these latest breaking news, the things that we cover on YouTube, Israeli News Live, definitely check us out. Also go to israelinewslive.org, our website. And if you're enjoying these broadcasts, send us an email. It's right there on your screen many times throughout the broadcast here, israelinewslive@gmail.com. You can email me, let me know if this is a blessing to you. If you have questions or if you even have prayer requests, want to be prayed for, etc., we'd love to be able to hear from you and know that these things are blessing you. Let's get right into the message this morning. Prophetic events are setting the stage for the coming of the two witnesses of Revelation 11. And I realize there are some different opinions on who the two witnesses are, even from Old and New Testament, Moses and Elijah, Elijah and Enoch, even Elijah and John the Revelator. A lot of different ideas out there. And I'm not here to bash one side or the other. I have no problem because, in reality, I don't know for an absolute certainty who they are, but I do believe that there are some amazing prophecies that have been overlooked inside the Bible that can give us a little bit more clue as to who they actually are. Let's get into that right away here. First, let's do a little overview of what we were talking about last week when we were speaking about Daniel 11, chapter 11, verse 40. I want to kind of go back in that with you again because even after I did the broadcast, the revelation began to pour more and more. The Holy Spirit just falling down and unwinding this incredible prophecy of what is transpiring in the Middle East right now. And of course, by the time this broadcast airs, we may have more things that are breaking, but I can tell you already, we have seen the United States strike at the pro-Syrian forces 3 times already. And Iran and Hezbollah, the fighters that are fighting with President Bashar al-Assad to try to retake his country, have threatened to strike U.S. coalition forces. I've stated to you guys, you've known about it from the very first broadcast there when I bring out Isaiah 17, Damascus a ruinous heap, that the U.S. coalition is surrounded Damascus. They're using, as they call these, safe zones. This is being used in order to pull in those fighting factions that are helping Bashar al-Assad in order to get them to engage with them so that they will have a justified means, one, to remove Bashar al-Assad from power, and secondly, to take down Iran, Israel's considered most feared enemy of all. Hezbollah, Lebanon. But don't forget, General Wesley Clark has already told us all these things. He told us years ago this was going to happen. But remember, he left out Egypt in that list. But of course, the Bible noted that as well, that Egypt will also be taken down in totally separate prophecy altogether. Now, let's read Daniel chapter 11, verse 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. As we look at the Hebrew on your screen, that is in red as you're seeing that right now. Those of you that can read Hebrew will understand what it says, but I'm going to read it. Imo melech hanegiv. All right, the first word outside of the red to the right there is itanagach, which is the pushing. So it's push. It says he, and it's got the yod with the dagish underneath that. That's he pushes with him. Imo, not against him, okay, or not at him, but pushes with him, the king of the south. It's an allied force together. As we go into the blue, look at the blue now. Ve'ishater al-Aliyav melech hatzifon. I read a little outside the blue there. Hatzifon be'rekava be'farashim. All right, what are we looking at here, guys? We are literally seeing in the biblical prophecy here, turning typical theology upside down on its head there, because it doesn't say what people are saying. Clearly in the Bible it says that they're going to overflow the lands, plural. Ba'atzot is what's written in Hebrew there, and that's what caught my attention. But what I missed on it when I spoke to you last week, I knew that the fact that the king of the north and the king of the south is pushing with him. They're working together to remove the enemies of Israel from around its borders. All right, now listen, I'm not for a loss of life. I believe that, prophecy can be there. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing in the world. Just like Hezekiah was told to put his, house in order by the prophet Elijah because he was going to die. But then he turned his face to the wall and he prayed sincerely that God would spare his life. And God did. He spared his life 15 more years. All right, so just because of prophecy is there doesn't mean that things can't be turned around. But unfortunately, there is a lot of bitterness in the Middle East. And as we spoke about Isaiah 17, remember when the first broadcast, if you ever caught it, if you didn't, look up, go back to World Harvest Television Network there, look up our first broadcast on Isaiah 17. We find out that Damascus has been a fortress for Ephraim, that were the first believers as Yeshua as their Messiah, Jesus as their Messiah. These were the first believers. The oldest church known in the Middle East is the oldest churches are from Damascus. And that's one reason why I can't help but wonder if the U.S. coalition is not trying to get a hold of Damascus in order to find those ancient documents, a trove of information that some people in this world do not want you to know about. But anyhow, so the thing is they're pushing together. He's pushing with him to overtake. But as you notice, though, he goes over him. But in the scripture, it says with his chariots and with his horsemen. All right? And what's fascinating to know is that if you look at this in biblical prophecy, the United States has achieved the ability to drop the Humvees, even tanks from the C-130s or the C-17, I believe, called the Guerrilla aircraft. They're able to drop these out of the back of the plane, and of course the paratroopers to go along with it. And Humvees is like a modern day chariot. So if he goes over him, what is he doing? He's flying over him. He pushes with him, the king of the south. By the way, the word for south is not Negev either. That's what's really fascinating as well. You don't say south and say Negev. Negev is the Negev desert in Israel, the southern desert in modern day Israel, ancient Israel as well. That's how we know the king of the south is Israel today. It's an Israeli leader. The king of the north is I won't say who. I have my opinion, but I don't want to throw that out there on this here. But there is a king that is running the U.S. coalition. And it's not Donald Trump. I don't believe that for a moment. We know that there is a shadow government. We've had too many presidents talk about it. Former presidents of the United States had spoken about the shadow government, the elites that are controlling the United States. So we know that that's a reality. But there is someone there in the background. And you got to remember, this forces, let's say, for example, we look at Britain. Britain does have a king. And Britain is in Daniel's prophecy, chapter 11, verse 39, when it speaks about that empire that worked with a foreign god. There's your king of the north. Not necessarily the crown itself, but something in behind that which controls the United States, which controls the European Union, which controls the NATO forces. There's your king of the north. And according to biblical history, back when Israel was a nation, the king of the north always was a Roman or a Greco king from Europe. All right, there's where your king of the north is. And they are allied together. And what are they doing? They're going to come, he pushes with him, and finally that coalition comes over Israel with planes, dropping out the chariots, as you can see here. Not only dropping out the chariots, dropping out the horsemen as they come over like a storm. Whirlwind, literally in Hebrew, it's a storm. They're coming over like a storm. If you've ever seen the pictures and when they come over and drop out all that stuff, it looks like clouds of human beings because of the fact of all the parachutes that are being dropped out as well. And what does he say too? Comes in with many ships, right? Well, we already know now that the military, the NATO militaries all have these huge ships that can drop out their armored personnel vehicles there. Again, more chariots, drop them out in the ocean. And even though they got tracks and all that heavy steel, those rascals actually float. and work their way into land. Amazing, amazing. And as we mentioned already too, and I just kind of reshare this again with you, as a Russian insider brought about, the U.S. was setting up a second base inside of southern Syria. Now, Foreign Minister Lavrov had argued that these were illegal, what the U.S. coalition is actually doing. When I say coalition, that's the British, that's the Norwegians, now Germany. Imagine that. Did you notice, and I don't have the article in front of me right now, but did you notice recently how that Germany began to push for taking their military out of Turkey from the Incirlik Air Base there where the U.S. is stationed at and moving it to Jordan, citing that the Turkish would not allow their people to inspect their military while they were there in a not too long ago incident. Well, let me tell you something. That's nothing but a staged event. The whole fact of the coup of Turkey was staged. And the reason why they have staged it, they've made Turkey look like the bad guy, but he's a NATO partner. What did Erdogan do when President Trump sent over those cruise missiles and struck the Syrian military? He applauded, he cheered, and he said to President Trump, "You should have done more." Showed his true colors, didn't it? Well, in Israeli News Live on our YouTube channel, you find out about this type of information. Because back when the coup happened, we had the inside information that it was a staged event from the very beginning. What was it to do? It was to take and to bring in an alliance with Russia in order for Turkey to be able to bring their military into the northern part of the border. They keep making themselves look like they're at odds with the United States, but they're not. They're not at odds with NATO. They've only been promised a great deal in the New World Order if they do the dirty work. Well, you know what? The guy's doing a great job at it. Erdogan's doing a lot of work, the dirty work there. At any rate, though, Germany was able to move now their fighters down to Jordan. What's it going to be used for? It's part of an attack that they're going to use not only on Damascus, but against Iran as well, to bring down the rest of Syria, and that's when we'll see Isaiah 17 being fulfilled. All right, so we saw that the bases, we brought this out in our last broadcast, this very article right here. First, U.S. unilateral installed itself on the Syrian territory at Al-Tanf together with rebels it trained in Jordan and pays from its own pocket. Then the U.S. bombed and killed Syrian troops on the Syrian territory, advancing in the general direction of the U.S. base in Syria. The U.S. then proclaimed a 55-kilometer exclusion zone for Syrian troops around its base in Syria. The U.S. then proclaimed itself threatened just by the Syrian army sitting outside the 55-kilometer no-go zone and brought in more U.S. personnel. Reportedly, there are now 150 Americans occupying Al-Tanf. This was reported by the Russian insider. All right, and it's, believe me, this escalated a lot since this article here that came out on June the 4th, 2017. A lot has escalated since then. And it's constantly, and like I said, who knows, by the time the article appears, we air this, it could be a full blown out war. And of course, Iran has threatened to hit the U.S. positions. And finally, according to American intel, that Iran actually sent a drone over that was armed. And again, a third skirmish breaks out. The U.S. striking again the Iranian forces that are fighting for the pro-Assad forces. The Iranians were striking as well. All right. Now, I want to back up just a little bit, set a little bit of stage before we get into the two witnesses here. And I know we're about halfway through our broadcast now, but I want to share with you some prophecies. I brought these out on Israeli News Live 2 years ago. There's been a lot of well-known evangelists that have shared those insights. I've been on their programs, shared them there, and they've shared them, no doubt, with you here, even on television, if you happen to watch World Harvest Television Network, about the prophecies from Nahum and Zephaniah. But I wanted to share them with you personally because the Lord had showed me these things back when Mosul was falling. And this is where Iran, by the way, has been fighting alongside the Iraqi army and the U.S. army, and not seeming to have a problem in the U.S. praising them. But when Iran is working to help Bashar al-Assad to liberate his country, the United States is striking Iranian military. So this is not going over well, friends. But I wanted to take you back to 2015. This is on thehistorybuff.com. These were prophecies that were being fulfilled. And a lot of people never even had any idea they were being fulfilled. Let's look at Nahum chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. But Nineveh is old like a pool of water, Yet they shall flee away. Stand, stand, shall they cry, but none shall look back. Take ye the spoil of silver, take the spoil of gold, for there is none end to the store, and the glory out of all the pleasant furniture. She is empty and void and waste, and the her heart melteth, and the knees smite together, and much pain in all the loins, and the faces of them all gather blackness. Where is the dwelling of the lions and the feeding place of the young lions? Where the lion, even the old lion, walked, and the lions whelped, and none made them afraid. Also looking here on your screen here, ISIS is both profiting off of destroying archaeology, and archaeologists explain how cultural heritage gets caught in the crosshairs. Even over here on the Express.uk on April 7, 2016 revealed Islamic State making hundreds of millions selling antiques on eBay. You see what I'm saying, friends? Prophecy, we're talking about Nahum chapter 2 was fulfilled when ISIS came in and overran Mosul. Mosul, by the way, is where the ancient city of Nineveh is at. In fact, ISIS even began to destroy the artifacts and the buildings inside the very walls of Nineveh itself. And they did ransack. They stole the money that was in the banks. They got US dollars. They sold all the ancient artifacts and sold them. What they didn't destroy, they were selling on eBay to profit off of it, right? Now, but it didn't end there. Then we have also Nahum chapter 3 and Zephaniah chapter 2 that went on and speak about not about ISIS and what they did inside of Nineveh or modern day Mosul, but what happens when the US and Iraqi and Iranian coalition come in to take down the rest of the city. Watch what it says. Nahum chapter 3 and 7 and Zephaniah 2:13. And it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for thee? Zephaniah says, and he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation and dry like a wilderness. I mean, guys, come on. We are seeing that prophecy fulfilled in modern days. All right, there might be some that would argue, okay, Nineveh was destroyed. Well, it wasn't destroyed during the time of Jonah, I can tell you that, because they repented in sackcloth and ashes. But it also mentions Assyria. Assyria, by the way, if you look at the borders of the ancient map, includes modern-day Syria and northwest Iraq. Isn't it odd that this entire region is engulfed in a war? Sure it is. But what's happening? What's happening with all these wars that are happening there in the Middle East? It's only setting the stage for the coming of the two witnesses. Let's begin to break it down. Revelation chapter 11. This is where it opens up the scene. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. Now, think about it. I'm going to share with you something that you probably did not even realize is fulfilling in modern days. The very beginning of the prophecy here, John has already spoke about that he was given a reed, a measuring stick, in other words, to measure the temple and everything. What is that? That's like an architect. He uses his ruler. He lays out the plans for the building. Do you know on Google Maps, if you look at Google Maps, you will actually see a visual you can click on and then the third temple pops up? Sure it does. They've already drawn the blueprints for the third temple. And in fact, Pastor Paul Bagley on the Coming Apocalypse program shared with you an interview with Rabbi Yehuda Glick. Rabbi Yehuda Glick's been on Israeli News Live before as well, but he shared an interview about the building of the third temple alongside the Dome of the Rock, and they're going to make like a library or something of that effect as an international gathering place in between the third temple and the Dome of the Rock. And what did the Bible say? Leave out the outer court and measure it not. It's given unto the Gentiles. It's given to the nations. It's given to who? Wow. Prophecy I don't even know if Rabbi Glick knows what he was saying. Have no idea. All right? But it goes deeper. Let me share something with you guys. We already know. There's a lot of argument when it comes to the identity of the two witnesses. I've always leaned to Moses and Elijah. That's just me personally. And I do not have a problem with being Elijah and Enoch. I understand the argument. The argument is based right here off of Hebrews chapter 9, specifically verse 27. But I want to do something for you. I want to read to you more about this prophecy and read to you a little bit more so we understand why Hebrews 9:27 is written there. And then maybe it'll make more sense to you. Let's look at it. Nor yet, verse 25, chapter 9, nor yet that he should offer himself often as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself, none other than Jesus. And it is appointed unto men, or anthropos, a human being, once to die, but after this the judgment. So who? Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. My friends, that right there shows you it's not appointed to men plural, ones to die. It was appointed to one man, a human being, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. He was the one man that was appointed only once to die, not that he had to die every year like the sacrifice. Paul is building you the entire passage in chapter 9 showing the temple service and how it kept being done over and over and over, but he was clearly identifying the fact that Jesus would only have to die once. It has nothing to do with Elijah and Enoch. It has nothing to do, in fact, if that were the case, what about the rapture? How many Christians really believe that there is a rapture? I mean, ZEPHANIAH, the Old Testament speaks about that you'll be, the meek of the earth will actually be hidden away, while the wrath of Almighty God pours on the earth. And if they're being hidden away, all right, they're not dying, are they? What about Lazarus? He died, raised up, and had to die again. I know some people argue, well, nowhere in the Bible said he ever had to die again. Well, that's not true. Come on. How many people in modern days die and are raised up, whether it be through prayer, by the doctor? My mother was one of those that actually died. I prayed for her, went to the woods, prayed for her, and everything. She'd been dead for, I don't know, a couple of minutes or so, or however long. It had to have been longer than that, because it took them about 15 minutes to get to my office or my workplace there, and then maybe a half hour she'd been dead. I prayed for her and God raised her back from the dead again. No. It's talking about the sacrifice only was appointed once to die. All right? So now let's take a look at the prophecies. And by the way, we're going to go into this in another broadcast. We'll probably take 2 broadcasts for sure to finish all of this prophecy up. But I want to share some things with you. Prophecy of Elijah. Let's look at Elijah. Matthew 17, 11, and 12. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias, which is Greek for Elijah, truly shall first come and restore all things. But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Did you notice? And a lot of people say, but okay, yeah, he puts it in the future, but they said, he already came. He's speaking of 2 different comings of the spirit of Elijah. All right? You have to keep in mind too, by the way, John the Baptist is already dead when he spoke this. And he clearly in the Greek language put his coming in the future. And then he also said to them, which they understood that he meant that it was John the Baptist, because they asked him the question, doesn't the scripture say that Elias must first come? And Jesus said, he's already come. See, he already come. You just didn't realize he'd already come. But he says he shall truly come. He's going to come, a future coming. Right? Now, he also does, there's another beautiful prophecy. And I'm going to share 2 things with you. Malachi 4 and also Luke chapter 1, verse 17, to show you that it's only part of it is being fulfilled. Let's look at verse Luke. And he shall go before him in the spirit and the power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the father to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Now jumping over to the other side of the screen, let's look at Malachi 4, verses 4 to 6. Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel with the statutes and judgments? Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Did you notice, if you're looking at Luke 1:17 and you're looking at Malachi, both of these prophesying of the coming of Elijah, John the Baptist, it was speaking of at his birth, that he was there to be the forerunner to the father, turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, but he doesn't mention that he turns the heart of the children back to the fathers. But Malachi prophesies of Elijah doing two things, turning the heart of the fathers to the children and turning the heart of the children to the fathers. And he speaks about, lest I smite the earth with a curse. Speaking of a day of burning and fire. Well, the earth didn't burn up when John was here, did it? No, it didn't. But John did fulfill half of Malachi's prophecy. He did turn the heart of the fathers to the children. And some people might say, what is the heart of the fathers to the children? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right? And what was the heart's desire of the fathers? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham says, I'm looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. He was looking for the coming of the Mashiach, the coming of the Messiah, Yeshua. So was Isaac, so was Jacob, so was Joseph. Joseph's life perfectly types out Yeshua the Messiah. I'll have to do a message here for you guys. It is so deep what his life types out. It is amazing, the prophecy, the prophetic insights that you'll see there, far beyond even that of what the scholars have ever taught you thus far. And just to kind of give you one little tidbit on Joseph there. When Joseph put his cup inside of their sack, and they found their cup in his sack, he overtook him and says, why did you take my cup? Do you know why he did that? Benjamin was the innocent child. Why did he do it to the innocent child? It was a prophecy that Yeshua, Jesus, would be rejected at the communion table, and it would be the Benjamites as well that would do so in the future. Yeah, Jesus was rejected in his mother's womb. Where at? At the hotel, when Joseph tried to get her a place to have the child in a better environment, but instead had to go down to the stable to have the baby instead. Where did they find their money the first time Joseph put their money back in their sack and sending them back home? They stopped at a hotel, and when he went down to the barn to put the mules there, he opened up a sack and found his money in the sack. What do you know? Why? Because you rejected Jesus when he was in the womb of his mother at the hotel. That's why it happened there. A lot of insights. Gosh, guys, we are out of time. I love you so much. We'll pick up on this next week.